there, welcome to Extra Healthy-ish, the big sister podcast to Healthy-ish. Both podcasts are for Body and Soul, and we've designed them to give you that little bit extra in your day for your mind, body and soul. I am your host, Felicity Harley. Tell me, do you ever feel the pressure to do more, be more, achieve more, and then worry over simply doing nothing? Well, my guest today is pretty much giving you a permission slip to push past this obsession we have in our society with doing everything. She wants us to enjoy the moment for what it brings. Madeleine Dore is her name, and she is the author of I Didn't Do That Thing Today, and she's going to share all her wisdom. Madeleine, thank you so much for coming on Extra Healthy-ish. Now, I actually ask this question for everyone who comes on this podcast. How do you stay extra healthy-ish in your life?
Oh, what a good question, Felicity. I've been trying to cultivate something that I like to call delightful discipline. And so I think a lot of us aim to be more disciplined in our lives. We think that if only we could be more disciplined, then we could stick to our routines, we could be more productive, we could be all of these things. But discipline has this sort of punishment baked into it. And it can be, for me, almost a little bit demotivating to think, oh, well, it's not really the thing that's going to get me out of bed is to think about sort of, you know, the grueling work that I'll have to do or whatever it might be. So delightful discipline, instead of making the emphasis on the punishment, it's about the delight. And so something that I really have applied that to in recent years is exercise. So that used to be all about the punishment of like, do this exercise and the reward will eventually be that you'll change your body. But then that was something that could easily be sabotaged because it was tied to a measurement. It was tied to, if I fail at this, then that's a punishment there. So instead of that emphasis, I changed it to a delightful discipline, which made it all about going for a run so that I could experience those feel-good endorphins, and I could feel more focused, I could feel more energetic, I could feel more creative, I could feel more connected to myself. And so I shifted the emphasis. And so delightful discipline is a healthy-ish habit that or a healthy-ish mindset, I suppose, that I apply to many different aspects of my life, be it exercise or work or even relationships. It's about finding the way to find the delightful thing. I like that.
Actually, I've got a mantra when I exercise. It's think of how you'll feel at the end. And that's what I just focus on because I feel wonderful after I go for a run.
Yes, exactly. And that just really trains you to sort of enjoy the start if you can focus on the end.
Now we're talking about, productivity guilt, why we're feeling this, and the worry of wasted time. I think many of us worry about this. Oh, where's that time gone? Hang on, I'm 30, I'm 40. Why haven't I done all this? Why do we worry about time?
Well, I think there's so much time pressure. There's so much emphasis on seizing the day, seizing every moment. We know on some level that we have this one limited precious life, and that can actually be quite a panicking thought in many ways. It's like, well, I better not waste a moment. I better seize every moment. But the thing is about trying to seize every moment is that it's an unrealistic expectation, because there will be moments that slip through our fingertips. There will be moments that we quote unquote waste. There will be moments where something doesn't go to plan, or where we are distracted, or we have an interruption. Time isn't meant to be seized, or maybe the way that we frame seizing every moment, it doesn't encompass enough of how perhaps lolling on the couch isn't so much wasting time. It's just our frame for it as laziness is what makes it feel like we're wasting time, when really maybe it is an important sort of way to find rest, or an important way to even be creative or experience boredom or just experience living. So I think that we have this pressure to seize every moment, but maybe we need to reframe what we count as seizing.
Gone wrong with this, because I feel like in many ways we've all become very goal obsessed, thanks to social media and memes. And, it's almost toxic in some ways. Oh, seize the moment, do this. We've only got one life. You must do this. What's your bucket list? But then is this contributing to why we feel like we're wasting all this time and why we just don't give ourselves permission to lie on the couch?
Yeah, I think so, because in all of that rhetoric where it's, pursue this goal, seize this time, do this, it's almost as if we're confusing ourselves for being these perfect robots that are able to just seamlessly pursue things, and there's not going to be mistakes, there's not going to be errors, there's not going to be misjudgments, there's not going to be, system malfunctions. There's a kind of almost this denial of our human fallibility. And so I think that when we then face the day and the reality of the day, we're disappointed, or we apply judgment right back to ourselves instead of the thinking that might be the trap or the stumble that we keep encountering. So I think that if we can get closer to embracing our imperfections as people, then we can work with them. We can work with our limitations, because there's limited hours in the day. There's limited hours in terms of our own energy and capacity, and that differs between people as well, and our own resources. And so if we can embrace those variances, embrace the imperfections, then maybe we won't set these very rigid homogenous expectations on ourselves.
Just to add to that, the other thing we can probably get better at is becoming okay with failing at things. You don't always have to achieve in life. We are, as you said, in Healthish, we're in such a society where it's all about achievement driven ambition. We value that. Maybe we're not okay with failure. Maybe we need to get better at this and think, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think so. I think you're onto something there, Felicity, because in many ways, how dull would it be if we didn't make any mistakes, or we didn't learn anything, or our lives were problem free? I think we're trying to sort of smooth over our rough edges, but actually it's our rough edges that allow us to connect to one each other and remind each other of our shared humanity. And I think that that's so much of the living is in picking up lessons and learning and relearning from our mistakes over and over. So I think we want them, because it actually is what propels us more than getting it right every time, because not only is that impossible, but if it was possible, it'd be rather dull.
We'll be back after this short break with more from Madeleine. Now, you talk about this splodge theory. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, well, I think splodge theory has been a great frame for me to remember that time, just like us, is imperfect. You know that feeling where a minute can drag on and on and on when you're waiting for a lover to arrive at a date?
Yes.
Or a minute can just be it can go by in a split second when you've just missed a train. So time itself, we have this way to measure it with a clock, but actually it's sort of slippery and it's splodge-like, and it has sort of, it can expand and contract because we also expand and contract. I know that sounds a little bit strange, but just in terms of being a person, we're not consistent. We are changing all the time, and time is also inconsistent. So if we look at a splodge time and see that it's not perfect, we can actually just seize whatever is in front of us. So I'm sure, this is definitely something that I've encountered, is that I'm often waiting for the perfect time. So that could be, I'll do that thing when I get through this busy week, and I have a stretch of free time available, or I can only do this if it's in the morning first thing, or I need to wait until I have 2 hours free to start this project. And that's really looking at time being quite rigid. Whereas splodge time, you recognize that there's no such thing as the perfect time. So you just begin with whatever you have. Maybe you've just got 5 minutes in front of you, and instead of waiting until you have 2 hours, you just use that 5 minutes. Or you might sort of make a task less daunting. So instead of saying that you're going to work on it for the next, or for the whole day, you just work on it for the next 30 minutes. And you might see that helps you begin a task and find that momentum. And it's a tricky balance, because we don't want to then go back to this whole pressure to seize every moment. But there's this idea that you seize what you can and for what you can. So be more flexible, just like a splodge has no sort of set shape. It's splodgy.
Yeah, I like that. And also it probably helps us appreciate the moment for what it is, not thinking that there is a finite end to it, or, oh, the time is going to come where it's going to end, but I'm going to enjoy it right now. How can we get better at filling our time with things that we like rather than things and activities that drain us?
Yeah, it's a good question, because I think there's a lot of approaches that I think you've really got to, again, find what works for you. And perhaps that is practicing saying no. If you're looking at your schedule and it's filled with these things that you have said yes to out of either a tendency to people please, or perhaps a tendency to make sure that you don't have empty time, because if you had any spare moments, you wouldn't know what to do with them.
And you wish you had things to fill your time. There's the paradox in that.
Yeah, there is a paradox there, definitely. So maybe if that's the case for you, it's really looking at, well, what things can I scrap from my to-do list? Or perhaps if you get through your to-do list, assessing the impulse to maybe fill it up again straight away with things to do. Maybe it's exploring saying no, but also exploring what it's like to have space if that's something that's available to you. So I think that it's really assessing this idea of, instead of filling our time, asking what it would look like to do fulfilling things in your time. And that there's no sort of straight answer to that. And it changes, and it's really about asking what you want. And maybe that's something that you haven't asked yourself for many, many years, because it can be scary to look at what we want and see that maybe we've been pushing it to the side for years or decades.
How do you deal with this? How have you learnt to, I suppose writing a book about it has helped you as well, learnt to perhaps make time for things that really nourish and enrich you as opposed to things that drag you down?
Well, one thing is that I do like to do an inventory from time to time, where I think we carry around a lot of the things in our minds and feel quite overwhelmed and perhaps stressed and anxious and not quite sure why. So when I can feel that feeling bubbling up, I do like to write a list of everything that's on my mind, of things that I have to do, or I'm telling myself I need to do, or other people are expecting me to do. And then once I have that list in front of me, assessing that, I can often see that actually all these things I've been carrying around, sometimes or very often, they're shoulds. So it's a list of shoulds that actually maybe there's a bit of flexibility in terms of, I could delegate this thing, or I could just not do this thing because it's something that I told myself I'd do, and I actually don't want to do that anymore. I don't need to. Or maybe I could do this later. I think we can fall into a trap of thinking that we can do everything all at once.
Yes.
And then feel overwhelmed by it. So maybe just even finding a better pacing for all of those things. And then nestled in that list of shoulds is often the wants, the deeper wants. And so they're the fulfilling things. And it's about kind of, I guess, recognizing that I have limited time, and those are the things that I do want to do. And interestingly, when you want to do something, you're almost more compelled to do it, and there isn't as much resistance. And so putting your energy toward the things that you want to do has this lovely momentum to it, because it's not as much of a drag, I guess, to have to do the things. So obviously there's complex things there, like there's things that we need to do sometimes that we don't want to do.
Yeah.
But looking at the shoulds are the real thing that I think we have choices about.
Yeah, actually, you just reminded me. I mean, as listeners will know, I wrote a book a couple of years ago. And one of the things that a lot of experts said to me, there is a lot of people who really guard their time, especially giving their time out to other people. And I thought this was quite an interesting concept. Whereas they just going back to what you said before, they're just getting better at saying no, and saying, okay, this is my hours that I have, and this many is going to my family, and this many is going to my friends. And they literally do an inventory of their friendships and think, okay, this is not, and I know that sounds quite brutal, but in many ways it is quite sensible, where they just say, okay, this person, I don't have time for you anymore. But in some ways it was, I actually quite liked it, even though it does sound brutal.
Yeah, I think it's a beautiful recognition of the fact that we do have limited time, And sometimes it can be a kind of thing to say no to somebody instead of maybe or a slippery promise of a yes, because we're leading them down a garden path too, and that's in effect wasting their time if we're not enthusiastic about spending time with them. So isn't it a kind of thing
Yes.
to everyone involved to
Yeah.
say that actually, you're freeing somebody else up too, I think, if you're being honest about, I don't know, looking at the things and the people and the work that brings you alive where you can, I think is doing a favor for yourself and everyone around you.
Yeah. Now, just finally, tell me, I often think writing a book, you realize things, about yourself, or you have aha moments. Did you have any, what have you learned, I suppose, after writing this book? Or is there anything in there you think, oh, wow, that is absolutely true? And especially now you're doing more interviews about it.
I feel like there's so many, because each chapter was almost like writing it was living that chapter. So if I was writing about the perfectionism, then I was encountering perfectionism with that chapter itself. So to take one,
Or what about an adolescent? Well, what about something that you would want listeners to know or to walk away with after reading your book?
Well, I think that the resonant thing is that it isn't about looking for a recipe from anybody else or trying to keep up with anybody else or to berate yourself for not even keeping up with your own expectations. It's really about giving yourself a permission slip to find your own way and to embrace whatever the day look like for you. So I think that takeaway of a permission slip to find a measure of the day that fits for you. I think I keep coming back to that again and again, just in terms of reminding myself that it really is about experimenting with your own life and experiencing your own life, and trying to be in your own day. I think that we can really trip up when we're looking at everybody else's, but we live in our day and nobody else's.
Yeah, Madeleine, that is fantastic words of wisdom. Thank you so much for coming on Extra Healthy-ish.
Thank you, Felicity. So,
what are you? Are you a time optimist or a time realist? I think I sit in the middle somewhere. Not sure. If you want to read more about that or any other of Madeleine's wisdom, she's got a great book. It's called I Didn't Do the Thing Today, and it's filled with lots of great tips on how to let go of that productivity guilt. If you want more from us at Body & Soul, you can log on to bodyandsoul.com.au, or we have many other episodes of Extra Healthy-ish or our little sister podcast, Healthy-ish. You can also join the conversation via Body & Soul at Instagram or Facebook. Thanks again for listening to my chat with Madeleine, and if you have a moment, we'd be so grateful if you could rate, review and subscribe to this podcast. And until tomorrow, stay extra healthy-ish.